Hello students. Today we are going to discuss the chapter called Morphology of Flowering Plants, and basically the topic the flower is very important, and so I'm going to begin with this topic first. This is the reproductive morphology, because the vegetative morphology, which is root, stem, leaf, we'll discuss in another video. So right now I'm going to take up this topic, that is flower. And as you can see, I have already shared the screen. This is NCRT. So let us take NCRT coverage along with the understanding of flower, the various parts of the flower. Now, firstly, you have to understand that what is flower, and flower is definitely, as it is given here, that it is a reproductive unit in angiosperms. So it is meant for the sexual reproduction, and typical flower has various parts. We are going to discuss the parts, which are namely, calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. And where is the flower arranged? It is arranged or present on a swollen end of a stalk or pedicel called as thalamus or receptacle. Thalamus or receptacle. Now, firstly, this is the just the beginning or the introductory that is given in NCRT. But let us understand it, that what flower, how we can, um, you know, describe or define, rather we can define a flower as. So I'll be writing here, we can define flower as a modified and condensed shoot. So we call the flower as a modified and condensed shoot. Now, how come a flower is a modified and condensed shoot? Okay, now, firstly, we have to understand why condensed, and secondly, why modified. Okay. But before that, you need to understand what a shoot is. So, in a vegetative morphology, a shoot consists of the leafy part of the stem. Shoot is nothing but the leafy part of the stem. So, basically, if it is a stem itself, we are saying it's a stem, but it's a branch actually. It must be having, nodes and internodes. So, as you can see, I'm drawing here. So, this is like node, and these between two nodes we call this as internode. Okay, and definitely if it is a shoot, then it will have the leaves too. So it will have the leaves here arising from the nodes. Leaves can be arranged variously, but I'm just drawing leaves here. So this is how a shoot will look like. Now the point is, if this is a shoot, how it got modified and condensed to form a flower. What happened in the flower is that this axis, you know, this axis got modified into that thalamus, which is given here as thalamus or receptacle. So flower has a thalamus or receptacle, which is nothing but the axis of the shoot, and all these parts, that namely calyx, which is sepal, the parts of the flowers you must be knowing, sepals, petals. What is androecium? Stamens. Okay. And what is the gynoecium? That is carpel. Basically, calyx is the sepal, the corolla, which is given here, is a petal, the stamens, androecium, and the carpel, gynoecium. So these all four parts of the flowers, they are actually leaves. Basically, if this axis got modified into thalamus or receptacle, then what happened to the leaves? Now, these are the floral leaves. What are the floral leaves? Sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels. Okay. So this exactly what a flower is meant by. As you can see some diagrams here, we'll go into this page 73, where you can see though this is meant for position of the floral parts on the thalamus. But just looking at this is a longitudinal section of a flower. At least you can see that how this is a thalamus, basically, isn't it? And how these sepal, then petal, then androecium. Sepal is what? Calyx. So I'm writing K. What is petal? Corolla, that is C. What is androecium? Stamens, A. What is gynoecium? That is carpel, G. Okay. So see how they are located on this thalamus. Now, if you look at this thalamus, it also must be having the nodes and internodes. Right now, I'm just trying to tell you how this flower is modified and condensed shoot. Okay. So if you look at this diagram, you can see that how the thalamus consists of, must be having these nodes and internodes. So from some node only calyx arised, corolla arised, androecium arised, gynoecium arised. They must have arisen from some nodes of the thalamus. Okay. But these nodes are now pretty close because they are very condensed. I mean, this whole thing is very condensed. Okay. And the nodes are now circular. As you can see, the nodes are now circular. So since they are circular, you call them even as floral whorls. So these four, KCAG, these four are even called the floral whorls. Okay. And these floral whorls, and these are nothing but the leaves, floral leaves, but in whorls. Okay. Whorls means they are circular arrangement. Their arrangement is circular. So I hope you understand firstly that why flower is a modified and condensed shoot. So where the axis with node is thalamus or receptacle, and the floral and the leaves are modified here. They no longer look like leaves except for sepals. Yes, sepals are green, so to some extent they look like leaves. Rest are modified, like petals are colored. Then stamens, which are much different. They don't look like leaves. Carpel, which is gynoecium. So this is how these are the four floral whorls. So let us go on to understand what else. We have to also understand that flower can be bisexual, unisexual. Let me clean this so that I can tell you more about the rest of the things given here. In fact, there is a concept of whether flower is complete or incomplete. So let us go like this. Though NCERT is now writing about the bisexual and unisexual flower, but let us understand in this way that the flower can be complete or incomplete. Fine. A flower can be complete or incomplete. Now, what does a complete flower mean? Complete flower means which has all the four floral whorls. All the four whorls. What are the four whorls? Just now we discussed that calyx, that is a whorl of sepals, is K. Calyx, the whorl of sepals is K. Okay. Then corolla is the whorl of petals, is P, is C. Okay. Then androecium, that is the stamen whorl, androecium is A, and the gynoecium, that is the whorl of, it may not be whorl, it can be only one, carpel. So this is G, gynoecium. So K, C, A, G, if all four present. Now see, if all four are present, this A and G, remember A and G are the essential whorls. They are called the flower's essential whorls, whereas K and C are the accessory whorls. Because the main function of the accessory whorls is to attract the pollinators. Why the petals are showy at times, they are beautiful, so that they can attract the pollinators. Whereas the essential reproductive function is done by androecium and gynoecium. So therefore, they are called as the essential whorls. Now the complete four whorls, which is a complete flower. We are talking of flower being two types, right? So when we say complete, it has all the four whorls. Now, when A and G both are present together, we call this as bisexual. When stamen and carpel both are present, you call such flower as bisexual. And the symbol is like this. Okay, bisexual is like this. So we make a male and female together. Whereas when K and C together present, this flower also has both sepals and petals. So we call such a flower also as dichlamydeous, because it has what? K and C, calyx, corolla both, sepals, petals both, very well defined and well visible. You call this as a dichlamydeous flower. So that means when I say complete flower, okay, the flower must be bisexual and the flower must be dichlamydeous. So you can always stop the video and you can note it down. So, or take screenshots. I am rubbing this to explain what are the incomplete flowers. Now, when we talk of incomplete flower, there must be some whorl missing, right? So incomplete flower where some whorl must be missing. So let us take which is missing. Like suppose the first is accessory whorl K and C. In some flowers, the K and C remain fused. It's said to be fused or they form only one whorl. They fuse and they form only one whorl. Now such flowers are monoclamideous. Such flowers are monoclamideous and you don't call that particular whorl as calyx corolla anymore. You just call it as a perianth. It's a whorl of perianth or tepals. Perianth or tepals. Lily flowers are very common. You can see with the florist, the lilies are available and you will never find the sepals separately. You rather find two whorls of only colored, they may be the white or pink or red or whichever the color is, but you will find only those similar structures are present. And you call them as tepals or perianth, okay? And they are not sepals and petals. So perianth or tepals, what is the symbol? Symbol is P. So the example would be lily or liliaceae. It is a characteristic of the entire family. So lily, okay, is incomplete flower because it is monoclamideous. It's not diclamideous anymore because these K and C have fused and they have formed only one whorl. So it is monoclamideous. Similarly, incomplete flower, the second thing can be, so I'm putting this as 1. I'm writing that second here. The second thing about the incomplete flower would be when they are unisexual. Now, unisexual, you understand, unisexual would mean that now it's not A and G anymore. They're not together. Either, a flower will have either A or G. Unisexual means it's a flower which is either having stamens, is called staminate, or only having G, that is carpel, is called pistillate. It has only the carpel or the pistil, so you call it as a pistillate flower. So when the staminate pistillate flowers are separate, they are not together any longer, you call it as unisexual. And such flowers, any example, let's see, you find in cucurbits, you find in some Euphorbiaceae in fact family, like Cucurbitaceae also is a family. So in such families you find that unisexual flowers are present. So, and these are the incomplete flowers. Now, this is how it's given even in this NCERT also, you can see. Then they talk about the symmetry of the flower. As you can see, they are talking about symmetry of the flower. Flower may be actinomorphic in the symmetry, actinomorphic, zygomorphic, or asymmetric. So there are three kinds of symmetry they are mentioning here, that flower can be actinomorphic, zygomorphic, or asymmetric. Now, what is the actinomorphic basically, which is given as a radial symmetry, zygomorphic given as a bilateral symmetry? Look at actinomorphic first. Okay, that when a flower can be divided into equal halves, basically the flower can be divided into equal radial halves in any radial plane. You can cut it in any plane, like this, okay. I mean, this plane, any plane you can cut, but the flower will cut into equal halves. I'll show you by simple diagram. And uh, if so, you call such flowers as actinomorphic. If you can cut it in any equal halves passing through any plane, into equal halves passing through any plane, vertical plane, so you call it as actinomorphic. And the symbol used for this is a circle with a square, this plus sign. Circle with a plus sign. The zygomorphic is a percentage sign or a cross. But we'll go to first, let us understand actinomorphic. Like you can see the examples here, like mustard, datura, chili. You have to learn these examples. Mustard, which is a brassicaceae, brassica. Mustard basically is brassica. And it has, 4 petals. The brassica flowers or mustard flowers have 4 petals like this. And if you cut this flower like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, it will cut into equal halves. So you can cut through any vertical plane and it can manage to cut it into equal halves. That's why the flowers of brassica would be called, or mustard would be called as actinomorphic. And same is true for, datura and chili. Basically, brassica is brassicaceae, you know that, and mustard and chili, they both belong to the solanaceae. So it's good to know the families. So brassicaceae, solanaceae, because these are, the family characters. They are having flowers which are actinomorphic. Though there can be exceptions, but very few would be the exceptions. Like in Brassicaceae, there's only one exception, that is Iberis, which is zygomorphic. Otherwise, the entire Brassicaceae is actinomorphic. Solanaceae is actinomorphic, like that. Now, the next one, which is zygomorphic, where the flower can be divided into equal or similar halves, but only in one particular vertical plane. So that is, as it is given here, it's cut, it can cut it into equal halves, but only one plane. This is zygomorphic, and the examples given, as you know, pea, gulmohar, bean, and cassia. So these examples are given. Basically, they are legume group, mainly pea and bean, which belong to the family called Fabaceae. They belong to the family called Fabaceae. Pea and bean. Fabaceae. Gulmohar and cassia. They are a bit different family, that is Caesalpinaceae, but they also come under the legumes only. So trying to make a little space out here so that I can tell you that what happens with the zygomorphic flowers. Now pea flower, for example, if I take the pea flower, Then, the flower is somewhat like this. We'll do more study about this pea flower. So it is like this. Okay. Now you cannot cut it into equal halves until you cut it like this. This is the only plane in which it will cut into equal halves. Similarly, there are flowers like this. This is a different, this is a salvia flower. Not mentioned here, but salvia also is, zygomorphic. It belongs to Labiatae. It's a family called Labiatae. So here you find that the flower will cut into equal halves like this. So this is the only vertical plane where it will cut into equal halves. So this is P, okay? And P is what? I told you P and bean, they are Fabaceae. Salvia is what? It is Labiatae. So they are some of the families. Labiatae, Labiatae. Some families, then this given here is Gulmohar and Cassia. Family name is not given here, but the Cassia, Gulmohar, they belong to Caesalpinaceae. Caesalpinaceae. Okay. So here you find that the flowers are cut only in equal planes, only in one plane. They can be cut into equal half. Then the third type, that a flower is asymmetric, irregular. Then the flower cannot be divided into similar halves by any vertical plane passing through the center, as in canna. So canna is the example here. Canna, where the flower cannot be cut into equal halves. So there's no point drawing the diagram of this. No reason we should draw. Only example is enough. So you should know the symbols. Zygomorphic, I again bring to your notice. This is the symbol, and actinomorphic, this is the symbol. That is circle with a plus sign. And zygomorphic, percentage or cross. Okay. Because we will be using these symbols. Like we have already discussed about bisexual. I told you the symbol. For unisexual, it's if it's staminate, then the symbol will be of male. If it is pistillate, then for female, isn't it? So next point we go to is that flower can be trimerous, tetramerous, or pentamerous, depending on where the floral appendages are in multiples of 3, 4, or 5 respectively. Means what? Like these four whorls that we have discussed just now, that is K, C, A, G. We discussed that the flower, if it is complete, it has the four floral whorls K, C, A, G. Calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. So, if I say that a flower has, almost all the, appendages, that is, say K, there are 3K, then C also 3, that is 3 sepals, 3 petals. Androecium, there are 3 stamens, and I may find a gynoecium also, which is tricarpillary, that is 3, or even it is possible that the K is 6, C is 6, but androecium and gynoecium are 3. In any case, these conditions you will call the flower as trimerous because the appendages are in 3 or multiple of 3. Similarly, if I find that the K is 8, C is 8, A is 4, and the G is 4, etc., I will call this flower as tetramerous because it is in a 4 or multiple of 4. Okay, so it is tetramerous. And so on, if I find all as 5, or I may find 1 as 10 and rest as 5, and still I'll call this condition as what? As pentamerous. I will call this condition as pentamerous. Why? Because I find K5, C5, I find androecium stamens 10 and gynoecium is 5 for pentacarpillary. So I'll call this as pentamerous. Okay. So this is the meaning of this. Flowers with bracts. Now next point they are talking about is about the bracts. Okay. Now, what is bract? The flower with bracts, reduced leaf found at the base of the pedicel are called bracteate. Okay. You also need to know that what a pedicel is. The floral stalk, like, every structure we talk about may have a stalk. like the leaf has a stalk called as petiole, or this flower has a stalk which is called as a pedicel. Floral stalk is called as a pedicel. Fine. I'll try to draw here, like this is the branch, this is the shoot, okay? And there is a node here, and I draw a small leaf here. Leaf, it's proper leaf, okay? And from here, I show the flower arising. It's a flower. Now, see, this is, now look at the labelings here. This is the node. This leaf-like structure, I'll call this as a bract now. Why? Because at this angle between the branch and this bract or this leaf, this angle which is called as axil, this angle is called axil, I find a flower. If this flower would have not been here, I would not call this leaf as a bract. So it is a specialized leaf at axil of which a flower arises. This is how a bract is defined. It is a specialized leaf at the axil of which a flower arises. And this stalk of the flower is called petiole. The stalk of the flower is called as petiole. Now, when a flower has a bract, you call it as bracteate, and when it is without a bract, you just call it as ebracteate. So the floral formula, we will see that we write Br at the beginning if the flower is bracteate, or we may write EBR if there is no bract, EBR, ebracteate. So if this is done, we can move on to page 73. And we find that here, based on position of the calyx, corolla and androecium in respect of the ovary on thalamus, the flowers are described as hypogynous, perigynous, epigynous. So we are talking of some terms here. Let us understand. Basically, here we are talking about the position of the floral whorls. So if you're making the notes, you can always write that this topic is position of floral whorls on the thalamus. Position of the floral whorls on the thalamus. Now, the position of the floral whorls are, of course, on thalamus, but it is with respect to what? Ovary. This is important, that it is with respect to ovary. Okay. Now, as you can see that based on the position of the floral whorls with respect to ovary, there are three terms: hypogynous. In the hypogynous flower, the gynoecium occupies the highest position while other parts are situated below. Now, if you look at the word hypo, the hypo means below. Gynous. Gynous means what? Gynoecium. Okay. So hypo, when I say hypo, gynous, so it has to mean what? That these all floral whorls must be below gynoecium. Okay. So let us write here hypogynous. So you have to remember like this. Okay. Floral whorls. Where are the floral whorls? Below. Gynous. So it is below gynoecium. How you represent this in a symbol? You write G, because you know the G is superior now. When you say hypogynous, you can also put a word here that is superior ovary, and it's given there. It's called superior ovary. So how you represent this superior ovary? you write G and you put a bar or you draw a line below like this. So you're showing that your gynoecium is above. So you're pushing it above. Now, as you can see the diagram here, no point drawing it here. Diagram A is already given here. And you can see how gynoecium, this is G and this is on the top. Look at this, K is below, C is below, and A is also below, gynoecium. These all whorls are below G. G is superior. So hypogynous flower means it is a superior ovary, and it's very common situation which is found as given here. You can see in mustard, China rose and brinjal. Again, you can identify these plants that mustard is Brassicaceae. What are the families you should always try to recollect? For China rose, I'll write it is Malvaceae. For China rose, it is Malvaceae. For brinjal, again, it is Solanaceae. For brinjal, it is Solanaceae. Mustard is Brassicaceae. I wrote already. So this is superior ovary in these families. Though it's present in many other families, it's a very common condition. Let's go to another condition, that is perigynous. So perigynous, as you can see that gynoecium here would be situated in the center, and other whorls would be located in the rim of the thalamus, almost at the same level. Rim of the thalamus almost at the same level. To understand, you can see the B and C diagrams here. It's somewhere in between. The gynoecium appears in between. Okay, these are the gynoecium and it appears in between, and these are, you know, the other whorls. It's like half superior, half inferior condition. B and C, it is half superior, half inferior condition. It's given here. You can see the ovary here is said to be half inferior. So it is same as saying half superior also. The examples are very important because over the years it has been asked many a times: plum, rose, peach. So it's an examiner's favorite. Perigynous, half superior, half inferior, found in plum, peach, which are prunus. I'll write the genus names. You can note down in your notebook. Prunus. So this is for the plum and peach. Aloo bukhara and aru Hindi mein. And rose, all of you know rosa indica. So these are the examples of half superior, half inferior ovary, which we symbolize like this. The bar is on the side, G and a side bar. Okay, so third remaining here, that is epigynous. The epigynous flowers, the margin of the thalamus growing upward, enclosing the ovary completely. So the margins will overgrow and that will enclose the ovary, as you can see in the diagram D. That all the whorls will go above the ovary. So where does the ovary go then? Ovary goes below. Ovary is all below, and all these are, getting fused, as it is given here, getting fused with it, and other parts of the flowers arise above the ovary. So this is the main point, that parts of the flower, they arise above the ovary. So therefore the ovary is inferior, as the flowers of guava and cucumber, also ray florets of sunflower. So these are the examples of inferior ovary. This one is inferior ovary. See how K, C, A, G all are on top of G. K, C, A, sorry, are all on top of G. So what is G now? G is inferior, and how you show it? You will show like this. This is inferior ovary symbol. Inferior ovary, same as saying epigynous. So epigynous, as the name suggests, epi means above. gynous, that is gynoecium. So all the floral whorls are above gynoecium. So where is ovary? Inferior. Inferior ovary. So I hope you have understood that these are the three types of conditions when we talk about the position of floral whorls with respect to ovary. Where are they located on the thalamus? So a quick recap. The first is hypogynous. Hypo, below gynoecium. So all the floral whorls are below. So the ovary goes superior. This one. Examples we have done, that is mustard, China rose, and brinjal. The second one, that is perigynous, where the ovary is half superior, half inferior, perigynous. So therefore, the thalamus is such that the floral whorls are arranged some above, some below. And as we have discussed that on the rim of the thalamus almost, okay, uh, the other parts of the flower located on the rim of the thallus almost at the same level. Gynoecium and the floral whorls will appear almost at the same level. So the symbols also side by side we have seen. So I'll take another different color. So superior ovary symbol was this, that is G, and there was a bar below. Then perigynous, that is G with a side bar. This is half superior or half inferior. And epigynous, that is when the ovary is such that it's inferior, it's below, and all the floral whorls are above. So it is epigynous. And this is the symbol G with a bar on top. The examples, as we have discussed, guava, cucumber, that is cucurbits. So you can always remember the family name, Cucurbitaceae. Then ray florets of sunflower. This is actually Asteraceae. Sunflower belongs to family Asteraceae. Okay. So parts of a flower. So we have finished till here, and we are moving to the parts of the flower, that is basically calyx, corolla, etc. And as you can see that calyx is the outermost whorl of the flower, and the members are called sepals. Okay, the whorl is calyx and the members are sepals, which are green, leaf-like, and they protect the flower in a bud stage. So that is the only work that they have, the only function, that they protect the flower at the bud stage. The calyx may be gamosepalous, that is when the sepals are united, or polysepalous when the sepals are free. What does it mean? That you'll see some flowers where, sepals are like this. In fact, the entire rest of the part of the flower, you can even take it out, and the entire sepal part may remain below. Okay, so this is the sepals which is united, and you will write this K, whatever the number, suppose I can count it here 5. So I'll write this as 5, that calyx world consists of 5 sepals, and I'll put a bracket. So this means 5 sepals, but gamosepalous. Okay, but in a flower where you may find that the sepals are all separate, and you can take off one, each you can take off separately, you just call this condition as polysepalous. And if it happens to be a polysepalous, you will write it as K. Suppose 5 sepals, you will just write like this. You won't put a bracket. So if you put bracket, it's gamosepalous. If you don't put a bracket, it is polysepalous. Same is true also with corolla. But before we go to corolla, in calyx, since Some modifications are very important, and I don't see a particular modifications given here. So let us do sepal modification called as pappus. Pappus is a hairy sepal condition, and it's a very characteristic of the sunflower or the family Asteraceae, which I was telling you just now. Asteraceae sunflower. You can always remember this, that Asteraceae or sunflower, the pappus is found where, the flower will have some, hairy structures like this. And these hairy structures are pappus. Actually, the sunflower which you see is an inflorescence, the entire sunflower which you see is an inflorescence, and the minute flowers which are present in sunflower inflorescence, which are called florets, disc florets and ray florets, are of two types, because there's a brown colored or dark colored disc in the center, and the minute flowers which are present inside are called the disc florets. And those yellow petals like things which you see, they are actually each a flower, and there is a ray floret. When you take any of these in your hand and you take a magnifying lens and you try to see, you will find these pappus. You will find these hairy structures called pappus. Okay, so it's a calyx modification. There are many modifications, but let's stick to NCERT as far as possible. Then let's move on to corolla. Now, in corolla, consisting of the petals, petals are usually brightly colored to attract the insect for pollination. So as I told you, that is the work of function of the mainly the petals, or the among the accessory world, especially petals, which attract the pollinators. Calyx corolla may also be gamo, like calyx, a corolla also can be gamo petalous, that is when the petals are united. Polypetalous when the petals are free, and you will move with the same, symbols. The only thing is, instead of K, you write C. Now, if it is C5, no bracket. So it is poly. So you will say 5 petals polypetalous. But if you write like this, then it is 5 petals gamo petalous. There are various shapes possible, color possible in the corolla. Corolla may be tubular, bell-shaped, funnel-shaped, wheel-shaped. Most commonly, these last three, there is a bell, funnel, wheel. These three are found in Solanaceae. Tubular, like in Gamopetalus, it is very common, like especially in Asteraceae. You may find petal like this, tubular Asteraceae disc florets. The central ones, the dark ones, the disc florets in sunflower. This is tubular I was drawing. Okay. And a flower which looks like a bell or a funnel or a wheel is very common in these members of Solanaceae. There are more shapes of flowers like rosaceous. Rosaceous is a condition of the corolla found in rose, where there are 5 clawed petals. Now, if you ask what are claws, if you take out one petal of the rose, you'll see it has a broad part like this, but a small claw like this. This is the claw. And this is the limb. So we call them as clawed petals, 5 clawed petals. Okay. Corolla has other shapes also, but like there's a ligulate, you can see like this. This is a ligulate shape. Only relevant ones we can discuss. This is found in the ray florets, sunflower. Those yellow ones which you think are petal, but actually they are each flower. As I told you, sunflower is an inflorescence. It's an arrangement of so many flowers. So this is a ligulate, and it's again gamopetalis. Rose is polypetalous. Okay. But tubular, I told you, disc florets of sunflower is gamo, this shape. And ligulate, which is ray floret of the sunflower, is also gamopetalis. Also, this particular shape which you see here given in the aestivation, this is though of axillary aestivation, but it's also the shape of the corolla which is found in P, and it is a papilionaceous. Papilionaceous or butterfly corolla of P. And P means we are talking of the entire family Fabaceae. P or Fabaceae. The very important corolla, and we'll discuss it through the aestivation that we are going to discuss. You can see how the petals, one broad petal here, then there are 2 side petals which are lateral, and there are 2 inner ones which are fused also inside. The rest 3 are not fused, but these inner 2 are fused. So we'll discuss at length about this papilionaceous corolla. So these are some of the important corolla modifications I was telling you. And we can't miss one, which is very important, and that is cruciform. Cruciform corolla, among the shapes of corolla. I hope you're getting my point. We are discussing the shapes of corolla. So which shapes we have done? Some 3 of them which are given here. I told you Solanaceae, bell shape, funnel shape, wheel shape. Okay. Tubular, I told you here. Apart from that, one is tubular, I told you here. Rosaceous, I told. Okay. Ligulate, I told. Papilionaceous, I told here. And now I'm telling cruciform corolla. Cruciform corolla, which we write as C cross 4, like this, is a corolla of Brassica, mustard. So by this time, you know that Brassica is mustard. Cruciform corolla, how it looks, just now I was drawing for aestivation, actinomorphic. So this is how it is. There are 4 petals arranged in form of a cross. So we write it as C cross 4. It's poly. It's very much polypetalous. C cross 4. That's why no bracket in 4. We are not showing it in a bracket. Polypetalous. Okay. So cruciform corolla of Brassica or mustard. So these are some important corolla types you need to know. Now, what is this aestivation that we talk about? The mode of arrangement of the sepals or petals in the floral bud with respect to the other members of the same whorl. So that means how a sepal is arranged with another sepal. Is it overlapping or is it not overlapping? Or a petal with respect to another petal? Basically, we see the overlapping part. Okay, so this is known as aestivation. But we see it always in a bud. I hope you notice this, that in a floral bud. It's very much given here that it is in the floral bud. The main types of aestivation are valvate, twisted, imbricate, and vexillary. What are the main types of aestivation? Valvate, twisted, imbricate, and vexillary. First, see valvate. Valvate is when sepals or petals in a whorl, they touch one another at the margin without overlapping. This is the key word, without overlapping, as in Calotropis. This is the example given here, though it is found also in Brassica. See this Brassica flower still in front of you, mustard, and if you see it even in the bud, the margins won't overlap each other. So you can even add to this mustard or Brassica is what is a valvate. And you can see the estivation shown here. You can see the first diagram. So how, these are the, petals. And you can see that these petals, none of them, they overlap the other. So you call this as a valvate estivation. Okay. Then the next is twisted, as in China rose, lady's finger, cotton. This is all same family. China rose, I told you just now, is Malvaceae, and so is lady's finger, that is your okra, bhindi, and cotton. Cotton, all of you know. So this is suti kehte hain in Hindi. So this all come kapas. It's rather kapas. So they all come in the same family, Malvaceae. Let's understand what is twisted. One margin of the appendage overlaps, that is where the sepal or petal they are talking about. Generally, we are taking into consideration the petals only. The sepal estivation is in a very high taxonomic studies. It's not at your level, so you are mainly doing the petal estivation. So one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one and so on. That means all the margins overlap the other. Each petal or sepal, the margins overlap the other. So where you find it is in China rose, lady's finger, cotton, and they all are Malvaceae. If you're also interested to know the names, China rose, you must be knowing, is Hibiscus rosa sinensis. This is China rose. Sinensis word means the origin is in China, then only you get this name, sinensis. So it's a China rose. Lady's finger is hibiscus. Esculentus. Though the another name is there, Ebelmoschus. Old name, Ebelmoschus. Genus name, Ebelmoschus esculentus. This is for okra, that is bhindi. Lady finger is also called okra, bhindi. Then you have one more. Which one? Cotton. Gossypium. Cotton is Gossypium, Pium. Gossypium, different species are there. Esculentum, if you want to write. Different species are there. So these all three are Malvaceae. So this is the family. Then going to the next one, that is imbricate. Margins of sepal or petals overlap one another, but not in any particular direction, as in Cassia, Gulmohar. The estivation is called imbricate. Now this is given very simplified. Okay, twisted, I hope you have seen how the twisted looks like, the estivation in the diagram. If you look carefully, that each petal, say it is one here, I write this one, just see one half is out and one half is in. This is 2, again half out, half in, 3, 4, 5. Each petal or sepal, you can notice that it's half in and half out. So this is twisted. Okay. Look at the imbricate, though the definition of imbricate is not too good. It's rather what we should say that imbricate is that when one petal is completely out, look at the diagram, one petal completely in and the rest three are partly overlapping. This is what is imbricate. You can write this. What is imbricate? Imbricate is when one petal completely out, one in or inside, and rest are partly overlapping. Rest are partly overlapping. Now, depending on whether this petal which is outermost, okay, there's one petal which is outermost. As you can see here, if I number them, one is completely in, 2, 3, 4, 5, where 3 is outermost, whereas 2, 4, and 5 are partly overlapping. So imbricate I'm saying is of two types, descending, ascending. Depending on what? Depending on the outermost petal. Now, if the outermost is posterior, it's descending. And if the outermost is anterior petal, anterior, then you call it as ascending. For ascending, the example is cassia, as given here in NCERT, cassia, gulmohar. So they come in the ascending imbricate basically, but there is the only example given here for imbricate. Reason being that descending imbricate aestivation has, if you take it, actually it is P, okay, but it has modified, okay, it has modified and has become what is known as the fourth one, the last one, and that is maxillary. This only modified and it became the maxillary aestivation. It's not that it has modified everywhere, but we have to discuss only P, and the P, it is modified and has formed the maxillary aestivation. Though there can be examples of descending imbricate also. Now, before I go into maxillary, you also must be wondering that what is anterior and posterior. How to understand that? What is anterior and what is posterior, with respect to which we are taking this imbricate as ascending and descending, and how you show it in the floral diagram. Like these are the estivations shown in the floral diagram. This figure 5.15 which you are viewing right now. See, if a flower is here, okay, so this is its growing axis, and we call this growing axis as mother axis. Okay, so with respect to mother axis, the petal which is most proximal, I mean near, this is the nearest, you call this as posterior. And the one which is just opposite to this posterior petal, that is this one, and you call this as anterior. So this is how it is. So posterior and anterior, first you should know the petals, positions, and when you view, you have to see actually when it is on the branch, on the plant, how it's attached, and then only you can make out whether it's a ascending imbricate or whether it is descending imbricate. Now, how you represent this mother axis in the floral diagrams? You represent mother axis with a dot like this. Now, if I make a dot out here, definitely now this becomes my posterior and this becomes my anterior. Okay, so this is the posterior petal outermost now. Or if I go to imbricate to understand this, so in that case, I have to make the dot somewhere. Say if I make it here, okay, In that case, I find that it is this one is posterior and it is innermost. So which is outermost now? It is the anterior which is outermost. So automatically you will say that this diagram is ascending imbricate, because I've shown the mother axis here and the anterior petal, which is this, is outermost. But if I could have reversed this, if I could reverse this and put, I can't reverse this, so I put a, the dot out here. So if I put a dot out here, okay, like this, so a little bit on the on my right hand side, somewhere like here, okay. Now look at this. Now this becomes a posterior and this petal becomes, the one which was posterior has now become anterior, and automatically the name will change and you will start calling this as descending imbricate. So this is how it is. But let us keep it here and let us call this as ascending imbricate. Okay. Descending imbricate, which is modified into maxillary. So we have to understand this fourth one, this diagram, which is for the P. I already told you, papilionaceous corolla. Now what happens in this one, we have to understand. So let's see. Posterior, as you can see, is the outermost, no doubt. In this diagram, as I have made a mother axis, so you can make out that this is the posterior petal and it is the outermost. Now this posterior, outermost and largest petal, it's also the largest petal, is called as a standard or vexillum. Standard or vexillum. So it's given here. See, pea or bean flower, we are doing this maxillary aestivation where the largest standard overlaps the two lateral petals of wings. So these are the two lateral, which are called wings or alae. In turn, overlaps the two smallest anterior petals. Now this is anterior and these are two smallest, as well as they are fused. The anterior fused petals are called, as given, keel or carina. Keel or carina. So these are the alternate names: standard or vexillum, wings or alae, and the keel or carina. So this makes the pea flower aestivation as vexillary, or the flower as papilionaceous, which I told you already. So this is how it is. I hope you understood all the points that we have discussed in this lecture, and especially regarding the aestivation and some important points of corolla and calyx, which we have covered. Okay. And as far as the modifications, as we see in NCERT, the modifications as such are not given. Okay. But regarding bracts and bracteole, I will mention one, that if suppose there's a bract, which you have understood, I think we have discussed already. Sometimes along with the bract, there can be more leafy structures present. So they are called bracteoles. Okay, they are called bracteoles. Now such whorl of bracteole is a very common feature. Whorl of bracteoles is a very common feature of Malvaceae, and this is known as epicalyx. This is found in the family Malvaceae. Epicalyx. Okay. So there are some modifications, more modifications of the bracts also, but it's not given in this manner in NCERT, so we can ignore it. But till whatever we have done, you have to make notes and you have to study properly. Androecium and gynoecium will cover in another video lecture. Okay, thank you then.